This is Lindsay Griffiths welcoming my husband David Griffiths, UKIP parliamentary candidate for Alyn And Deeside.
And Lindsay, these are such important times. And I'm speaking now, yes, particularly to the good people of Alyn And Deeside, but also to the whole world, because there are principles here which are so important on the subject of protection and sovereignty. You know, Lindsay, government's first duty is to protect its people. And a government cannot do this effectively unless it upholds the sovereignty of its own constitution. You know, in Great Britain, we have as our head of state Her Majesty the Queen. And two times, not one time, two times in the coronation service, which goes back to 1689, there is mention of upholding the laws of one's own land. Now I'm going to refer to this. When the Archbishop said to the coming monarch, "Will you solemnly promise and swear to govern the people of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the Union of South Africa, Pakistan and Ceylon," remember this was 1953, "and of your possessions and the other territories to any of them belonging or pertaining," now this is the point, "according to their respective laws and customs." I'm telling you this today, and I mean this most sincerely, that it is UKIP, United Kingdom Independence Party, which throughout its history has been founded on upholding the laws of our own nation. That when people send their representatives to Parliament, they are there as the chosen of the people to make laws, to uphold laws of our land and not of another nation. Now this is most interesting. It comes as another part of the coronation service, the coronation oath, and it relates to the upholding of the Statutes of Parliament and Parliament alone and the laws and customs of the same. This is our sovereignty. Now UKIP in Wales has produced an excellent manifesto called Wales into the World. And let me tell you this, if Wales is to be successful in the world, we need to uphold that which is precious to us, and that is our own Parliament, yes, in Westminster, but also in Cardiff, because both come from the same stable. Both parliaments are under and opened Her Majesty the Queen. And so my heart to you today, as parliamentary candidate for the precious seat of Alyn And Deeside in the House of Commons, let me tell you this. First of all, I shall demand protection for the people of Alyn And Deeside. How will I do that? By bringing to the attention of Parliament our own sovereignty, which was signed away by, frankly, rotten politicians, which I'm not afraid to call quislings, who have even to this day questioned the validity of the monarch's oath to God. You know, Lindsay, we were at a hustings at Gwenamyneth, near Mold, not long ago, where a Liberal Democrat candidate sneered and laughed when I brought up the subject of our coronation oath. an oath to God by the monarch to uphold our own laws, to uphold what Parliament stands for, not that of a foreign power. He says you give up all that when you join a trading club. Let me tell you this, the British people have voted not to be in the trading club, as he put it. Indeed, it never was just a trading club. Free trade is one thing. To steal our constitution is another. So we can look forward, post-Brexit, to moving forward with our own laws, with our own people deciding who represents them in Parliament. Neil Hamilton wrote this: only UKIP are clear that a full and clean Brexit is needed. A strong UKIP showing in this election is necessary to hold the Prime Minister's feet to the fire. Voting for Tory, Labour and Lib Dem remainders will we ensure that we remain a member of the EU in every way but by name. It will be, and I like this expression, Lindsay, it will be Brexit light. Only a vote for UKIP will ensure a clean Brexit. Now, this excellent publication deals with certain subjects. Now, Lindsay here has been in teaching all your life, Lindsay, your working life.
Yes.
And you know the importance of education to a nation. Well, what do you think about a nation which has not even taught its children its history, the history which brought us common law, the history that brought us our constitutional acts? How can there be a sensible education system without history and heritage?
It's impossible. And that is why when these vague phrase called British values is bandied about by this government, what do they mean? They can't talk about British values without mentioning the coronation oath, the Queen, our heritage, our constitution.
Exactly. You know, for over 20 years, UKIP has been fighting a system which has taken away our democracy. Remember being on the street stalls of Vote Leave? What was coming up time after time again was the issue of our democracy, our sovereignty, our ability to control our borders. All this was coming up time after time again. And even if there was no economic argument for Brexit, which there is, then sovereignty needs to take the priority position, Lindsay.
It does. And, you know, recently, a couple of people who were, I think David Jones MP and another in this area, were leading the Vote Leave campaign. And they were saying, this is the last chance for Britain. We must vote Leave now. That was only a year ago. Yeah. And all those people of the older generation who voted Leave, and by the way, a lot of young people did as well, despite the lies you hear, older people were saying, coming up to us on the street stalls and saying things like, well, I'm too old now for it to make much difference. I'm thinking of the future for my children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. You see, they were thinking unselfishly.
You know, the economic argument does come into this. And the economic argument is also clear. That Brexit is going to bring us a wealthy country. And I'll tell you why. First of all, you will not prosper unless you honor your own foundations.
Absolutely.
A house will fall. So if we have a queen that has promised God to uphold the laws of Parliament, the statutes of Parliament, the statutes, the customs of our nation and our nation alone, then our nation turns away to a foreign power and unelected officials to make rules and laws for. You know, there's a law about hazelnuts in the EU, which it has about 2,580 words, something like that. The hazelnut regulation, the size of hazelnuts alone. Now, the Ten Commandments is only about 300 words. Yet the EU is placing page after page of regulation on our businesses, our farmers, our fishing folk. And you can't do anything without breaking its laws. What we're needing is a Britain free of this. And only UKIP can bring you this. Now, also, these laws bring extra costs to local parliaments, or rather local councils, the Assembly in Cardiff, to our own Westminster Parliament. Extra laws bring extra costs. Now, going back in Wales to 1999, some of you in Alyn And Deeside may well remember this. There was another referendum campaign over whether or not there should be a Wales Assembly. And those of the yes vote persuasion declared to the people of Wales that an assembly would cost per year between 10 and 20 million pounds. Do you know what the figure is today, Lindsay?
No.
The figure today, if you include local councils as well, local authorities, the figure today is 500 million pounds a year. A huge increase. And why is that? Regulation after regulation, which means highly paid people to oversee.
Exactly.
And did you know that in the local authorities of Wales, there are those who are chief executives earning 4 or 5 times more, I believe, than the Prime Minister? You know, we have become a bureaucratic country, upholding not the statutes and laws of Parliament, but the statutes and laws of an unelected group of people called the commissioners, who have for decade after decade been destroying our country to the extent it is, I believe, 1.5 trillion, huge amounts of money anyway, in debt. We are having overpaid people in every area of government upholding the laws and rules of the EU. That is why this wonderful document, Wales into the World, is so good. It points out these corruptions and it declares that over the last 20 years, UKIP has been in this country the party of democracy, and I'm quoting now from this manifesto, fighting tirelessly to wrestle back powers from an increasingly undemocratic European Union to the UK. Now, there is hope. We voted to leave. But the forces of the establishment, Lindsay, are doing all they can to take away your vote. Only a strong UKIP candidate from Alyn And Deeside can do something about it. Because let me tell you this, the establishment would just have you wallow away all your money, all your taxes. The same old system will continue, Lindsay. So, UKIP has 8 points in relation to democracy. 1, encourage local authorities to restructure back office functions, merge departments where appropriate, to save your money, the taxpayers' money. 2, limit the total cost of government administration. Frankly, we've been town councillors for 5 years.
Yep.
How much waste have we seen at county council level?
Massive amount.
They are unbelievable. how much do they spend on legal costs and legal costs
Millions.
alone? You know, something has to be done. 3, we in UKIP will oppose any increase in the number of Welsh Assembly members, which I regard, quite frankly and commonly, jobs for the boys. Don't want to be sexist. Girls as well. Jobs for the boys and jobs for the girls. Number 4, we will establish constituency offices for Welsh Assembly members within existing public buildings. You know, I've just heard this week of the actual cost of new government buildings in Colwyn Bay, which is going to put an enormous amount on the pressures of council taxpayers in one poor part of North Wales. You know, when I hear of 800 council jobs, I start asking, are all these jobs necessary? You know, we need to have a streamlined form of government. If government was business, it would have been bust years ago. We need to bring an understanding into councils, local authorities, in the National Assembly of Wales, that the money you are spending is not yours, but the money of the people entrusted to you, and you are letting the people down. Number 5, introduce an element of proportional representation in local councils. This will bring about the conditions for people to come from all aspects of life, so committees can be formed, agreements can come about, and most importantly, be the best value of money for the council taxpayer. Then, number 6, replace the costly cabinet system of local government. We see them there, don't we, with their high wages. They get more when they're on the cabinet than when they're just an ordinary councillor. And then there comes, and we've seen it, Lindsay, haven't we? Don't they enjoy the status?
Oh, they do.
Oh, I'm on the cabinet, you know. You know, look, we need ordinary, hard-working people in councils. And to start playing around with positions at this level of government, it brings about pride. It also brings about a waste of money. Number 7. Now, this is most important in democracy because we've seen it. We would restrict the use of postal votes to people who really need. You know, if you can walk to the polls, you need to walk to the polls. Now, we know if you're disabled and of whatever capacity, there is a need for a postal vote. We're not looking to remove postal votes at all. But there are many people who have postal votes who can walk to the polls. And we need to see the polls being used properly. And that is by paper. There's huge dangers, and this is point number 8, in having electronic voting systems, which can be corrupted. There's a lot of talk about this in America.
Yes.
And we need to maintain the old-fashioned pencil, the old-fashioned cross, which you place in the black ballot box. This is our British culture. This is what we're all about. Going to the polls and voting accordingly. Now, when it comes to the economy, Lindsay, you know, we're hearing so many figures from the elite that we're such a rich country. But when we start looking at the bottom line, you know, years ago, Lindsay, I was a sales rep. I used to have, Lindsay is Scottish, by the way. And I had a Scottish sales manager called Derek Sim. Derek is now chairman, I believe, of Montrose Football Club. And if my figures weren't as they should be, because the sales rep had to ring his sales figures into his area manager, which Derek was. And if they weren't as he wanted them to be, like any good Scot, you know what I'm talking about. He'd kick off. You know, David, this is not what I was expecting, you know. Well, frankly, if Derek was in charge of the government, and the government rang up with the debt figure on a Friday night and said, Derek, we're now 1.85 trillion pounds in debt, he would not see that as a viable business proposition.
Crazy.
Think of it. This EU membership for 40 years, which was to bring us prosperity and wealth. And I'm thinking of the dear farmers. Excuse me, Lindsay and I were at the farmers' husting. God bless their souls. They've had to battle with the common agricultural policy. The fishermen have had to battle with restrictions on their fishing. Quotas and all of this. Oh, no, no, no. And it's supposed to have made us rich. We're 1.85 trillion pounds in debt. And the UKIP Manifesto in Wales declares Westminster must put the interests of the British people first. And we cannot saddle future generations with uncontrollable debt. Now, the manifesto in Wales also rightly points out, Lindsay, that Wales has been totally abandoned by mainstream politics. And in Wales, how many people, Lindsay, are suffering in Wales?
Massive numbers in the whole of Wales.
Yeah. And this is important because it's certainly in many parts of North Wales the truth. Many of our communities offer no stable, decent work. And outside Cardiff, the idea of a metropolitan utopia that offers highly paid professional careers is alien concept to most. Now, I know in Alyn And Deeside, many go and work at Broughton, in British Aerospace. Many go and work on the Wirral of what was Vauxhall. And we know there are highly paid jobs within reach of the Alyn And Deeside constituency, but not in the whole of the constituency, certainly not in the rural areas. And I'm telling you, I care so much. I've got a passion about this. You know, something's got to be done to enliven the rural areas. Now, do you remember that man at the farmer's husting in the last question?
Oh, yes.
He said, why do young people not walk the countryside anymore, that they're on their screens? You know, in the Alyn And Deeside constituency, we have wonderful areas of countryside, and they need to be developed. You know, if you go to countries which has, rural areas, they're being developed in a way which is complementary to the scenery around them. Yet we're seeing areas just left alone. Let me tell you this. Yes, we care about the environment. We'll be dealing with that a little bit later. But we're talking now about the economy. We need to see people freed up in this economy. Now, what are we going to do? This is what we're going to do. You know, a vote for UKIP this Thursday. This can bring us the ability to place pressure on whoever the government is going to be for certain things which the establishment doesn't want you to have. Number one, UKIP would raise the personal allowance to 13,500 so people can earn enough money to cover their basic needs. 13,500. That means, Lindsay, those on minimum wage, which we have in Alyn And Deeside, those on minimum wage would be taken out of tax altogether. The threshold for 40% income tax to 55,000. Now, ensure, number 3 point in our manifesto from Wales, ensure Brexit negotiations give us complete control over VAT. It should be the government of the land that decides its taxes. In fact, do you remember the name of the tax on the sale of goods before the EU or EEC, Lindsay?
It's purchase tax.
Purchase
Yes.
tax. Let's restore purchase tax. You know, in America, they have what they call sales tax, which is about 8% in most states in America. Let us bring back our tax-raising powers to our own country, to our own officials, and let us not be under a foreign power ever again that has given us outrageous VAT rates of 20%. You know, in Ireland, an EU country, it's 23%. You know, we need control. You need to vote in people who can have the control over our taxes. We will restore British tax sovereignty, which was lost when we signed up to the EU. We will end the practice of business paying tax in whichever EU or associated country they choose. Our membership of the EU enables companies, now listen to this, to avoid paying some UK taxes with impunity, and we will close this loophole. Now also, we're going to set up, I believe there's going to be a UKIP government, not this time, although, let me tell you this, pass this video along through your Facebook channels, through your YouTube, through your Google social, through your LinkedIn, where it's not copyrighted. Send it wherever you want to send it. Let's get vote at the vote on Thursday in Alyn And Deeside. Vote David Griffiths Ukip. I tell you, I'm promising you, I'm going to give you one promise. I'm going to wind them up and stir them up. And how will I do that? We're not establishments. Now, if you vote for the same old thing, my God, I'd just sit there on Thursday night thinking you voted for the same old thing again. God bless you and all of that. But I'm crying out to you for your vote because I want to see a big change. We'll support the devolution of business rates and corporation tax to the National Assembly for Wales, because the Assembly needs to be responsible for the growth of the economy of Wales. Right. And it's time to stop thinking of Wales as a subsidy-based economy, but an income-earning economy with businesses and industries thriving in our country. Yes. For that to happen, we need to raise our own taxes. Oh, boy. I'm so excited, Lindsay. We need, this is all good stuff. I'm looking at it now and look, it's good stuff. You know, we need to have high-paying job for this generation and future generations. Moving away, I love this. This is a great quote, We need to move away from a public sector and subsidy-based economy. Yes. We need, let's say it all together, we need to move away from a public sector and subsidy-based economy. Wales, grow up. Let's get rid of these loony politicians which have been ruling the Assembly for years. We need a vibrant private sector. We need our own Silicon Valleys. Oh, yes. Yeah, we could say, I'll tell you this, we could empty California. So that they come to the valleys of Wales. How about that? We need to invest in high-tech jobs and skills. Now, this is Lindsay's favorite subject coming up now. As I turn the page, education. It is so sad, Lindsay, that continuously, I mean, even Colwyn Jones in the Assembly said it makes for uncomfortable reading. I mean, we could have predicted it before it happened. But in the PISA ranking, in Great Britain, Wales comes bottom time after time again, Lindsay. Why? I mean, you've been chair of governors of a school in Old Colwyn. You have been head of classics at the Queen's School in Chester, not far from the Alyn And Deeside constituency. You've taught at Gordonston. You've taught classics at a well-known school in Scotland, the High School of Dundee. You've taught in a comprehensive in Glasgow.
Yes.
You've taught in a comprehensive in Jedburgh.
Yes,
you know what it's like to teach in the private and the state sector, and you've seen what education is like in North Wales. What is it like, Lindsay? Come on.
Okay, well, it's underfunded. It's underperforming. Too many rules and regulations, too much emphasis on statistics, as they call
Absolutely.
data,
It's in the
and not
manifesto
on
here.
the pupils themselves.
I'm going to read to you the opening line in the manifesto, Lindsay. See what you think of this. Here it comes. UKIP believes the success of the economy is dependent upon the existence of a strong education system.
Absolutely.
The education system has been largely ignored in recent budgets, which is what you just said, has suffered from a combination of curriculum changes,
Yes.
a culture, I love this, of qualifications for all. What is a degree in Great Britain worth today to your day?
Well, not as much as in our day. See, in our day, only about 2% of the population went to universities. So everybody was able to get a job. You know, being a graduate was really something. But then along came Tony Blair with his education.
Yeah.
And what's he done?
And graduates can't get jobs.
No?
So we're dealing with a serious problem where we need to bring the conditions for our education system, yes, to be for all, but that of a qualification that if you do get it from a university actually means something in the marketplace, which commonly it doesn't.
Yes.
Now, what's UKIP going to do about it? 11 points. Point number 1, support the creation of a national schools fund to refurbish Victorian age school infrastructure. We're saying there needs to be good facilities and good buildings to modern standards.
Absolutely.
2, end the forced closure of community schools. These have been schools which have been there for years and part of the community, successful parts of the community. Take
Yes.
away its school, the community loses part of its heart.
This is particularly true of rural schools. As David was saying earlier, we need to regenerate the rural areas. But rural schools have been closed one after another and another and another. This must stop.
Number 3, promote the creation of a cross-party committee to review the education system. Propose a new qualifications and curriculum framework. And central to this will be a statutory guarantee that no further changes will be made in a generation, offering teachers, listen to that, no further changes to be made in a generation. That is why I believe primarily results are so bad.
Yes.
That you know also that you've not taught about the country's heritage and culture and the rise of civilizations and classical studies, the understanding of faith, just being ignored. No wonder Wales is bottom of the PISA rankings. So we need to do something about it. So we would not have any changes in a generation. We'd offer teachers, schools and pupils what's really needed: continuity
Yes.
and consistency.
Yes.
Number 4, we would introduce chartered teacher status, which could only be gained by those demonstrating the highest standards of excellence. 5, protect parents and student choice. Specifically, we will ensure all parents have the right to send their children to a local school which teaches in either the English or Welsh medium. 6 out of 11. Number 6, have a university who would be part of the development of education and economic policy within their region. In other words, Lindsay, the universities would no longer be isolationists, but very much part of the community. Specifically, we'll look at appointing a lead university for each of the 5 assembly regions to take on a key role developing further education and skills provision within each region. By bringing the conditions for universities to be involved in a specific region, it would encourage graduates to stay in that region and develop that region, whereas in North Wales there's a massive lack of GPs because they do not want to come into North Wales because they see North Wales as, for whatever reason, not a good place to go to develop their career. By having a medical school in North Wales, for example, and have that medical school as part of the community, I guarantee within a generation we will have solved the GP crisis. That's what this is all about. Appoint, this is number 7, local and regional industry representatives to all governing bodies to oversee the developments of courses to ensure they meet the future needs of the economy. So a university would be forward-looking, and I would like to emphasize still understanding the heritage of the nation, because without foundation, how can you move forward? Number 8, allow increased autonomy for universities in Wales to establish fee structures that are competitive, allowing universities to thrive into the future. Supporting, this is our point number 9, comprehensive schools where they exist. Supporting, too, the establishment of new grammar schools and technical college. Now, this is where UKIP is different to the Tories, Lindsay. The Tories say you have to have new grammar schools. You have to contain the existing comprehensive schools. This is the difference between establishments and UKIP. What UKIP is saying here, whatever the local community decides, that they can have.
Excellent.
So they can be offered existing comprehensive schools, they can be offered new grammar schools, they can be offered technical colleges. It's what you, the community, want. Look, we're giving the power to the people. We are the We the People party. Whereas they are the You Are What We Say party.
Exactly.
Vote UKIP. Number 10. Ensure class sizes are capped, especially in primary schools. And finally, allow, this is number 11, parent governors to request an ESTIN inspection of their school where there are clear issues of mismanagement. Now, we have now dealt with the subjects of education, the economy, democracy. We've had the original quote, which came through Neil Hamilton, saying only UKIP are clear that a full and clean Brexit is needed. A strong UKIP showing in this election is necessary to hold the Prime Minister's feet to the fire. Voting for Tory, Labour and Lib Dem Remainers will ensure that we remain a member of the EU in every way but by name. It will be Brexit light, whereas we need a clean Brexit to give us the freedom to make our own laws, to allow our country to prosper again, to have a happy, united nation, secure and protected under the knowledge that we've restored our very own constitution. We restored our very own statutes. We restored our very own customs. It's time to be Welsh again. It's time to be British again. We are the nationalist party. Why? Because we believe that Wales needs to play a special part in the UK, not be under the unelected officials of Brussels, which is the belief of Plaid Cymru. PC, politically correct party.
Absolutely.
Energy. I've had the energy. And this energy is so important.
Yes.
We owe it to future generations to protect the environment. Yes, but do you know, I was studying this. There is such a thing, Lindsay, as clean coal. And clean coal can take out, I believe, the carbon dioxide.
Wow.
And we could bring back to the valleys, not the coal mines as you know them with the big slag heaps, but beautifully clean industries making clean coal, fossil fuel, because in the valleys there are seam after seam of coal there to be mined. The carbon dioxide, I believe it is, the part which causes the pollution, can be removed. And we can have clean coal. And in America, they have just opened their very first clean coal. I don't know whether they call it a mine or whatever they call it. But whatever, they get the coal out the ground and make it clean. And it's good for the environment. And it's a much cheaper form of energy than these darn wind farms.
Absolutely.
Everywhere you go in Wales, blighting the whole, they cost a fortune. They are not financially viable. And we need to develop solar panels much more. We're getting field after field of solar panels. But what I do, you know something, it's not windy every day in Wales. You know, so it's obvious that you don't get wind 24/7. But what can be regulated is the tide. And we like the idea of the tidal lagoon in Swansea, and there's talk of it too in North Wales.
Yes.
Well, you can see that on the picture there in our manifesto. Yes, we know when the tide comes in. So there's much more of an economic argument for a tidal lagoon than these wind farms. And yes, farmers, yes, fishing people. Look, UKIP is not only dedicated to ensure that initially, when I say initially, if the subsidies are needed at this time, we realize that, we know that, but I believe that we can move on from subsidy in farming, that we can have prosperous farming. Yes, it needs a boost from government, but it doesn't need all the regulations and rules of the Common Agricultural Policy. We don't need to send out our fishermen out into the sea who have to compete with foreign. We're going to stop the foreign fishermen coming in unless they have a license. We're going to put a 200-mile radius. Now, coming to subsidies, before you start thinking that you've made something out the EU, did you know that for every £5 UK agriculture received in subsidy from the EU, the British government has already paid in £10. So you pay in £10 to get £5 back. Now let me tell you this, we can get you a better deal, farmers. Now health, Lindsay, what's health like in North Wales where we are? We've got Glan Clwyd on special measures. We know many in the Alyn and Deeside constituency use Wrexham Miler. Now, let me tell you this. You only have to look at the economics of the NHS. Now, first of all, NHS, UKIP's firmly committed to the NHS. Let me tell you this, a brilliant concept, health for all. But I'm telling you this, those who brought in the NHS in 1948 had no idea of a management structure. The figures of a staff. Let me just read you this. This is in the UKIP Manifesto on the NHS. We can no longer afford to ignore the elephant in the room, namely, there's a scandalous proportion of NHS resources are being swallowed up by senior doctors and managers earning as much as $375,000 per year in overtime alone. Now, we've had witness coming to us that doctors are even taking their time. Now, we haven't the evidence, it's just hearsay, but I can believe it. You know, taking their time seeing people because they get the overtime up. Is that true, doctors? Be honest with us. What I want to see is a properly managed NHS. In 1948, they never had any idea of the NHS having managers earning 5-6 times more than the Prime Minister in overtime alone. This is sheer madness. So what UKIP would do is create a staffing strategy that takes into account the peaks and troughs of demand, future population increases and demographic changes to ensure the NHS is not forced into paying ludicrous overtime bills to maintain basic services. Another big cost is agency bills. Because we're not training the nurses, the NHS had huge costs. Now, are we saying we're going to not fund the NHS? That's not what we're saying at all. But what we're saying is we don't want to throw money at what I'm seeing here as a corrupt organisation. This is not right. We need to have dedicated people in the NHS who care and love the people and are not in it just for the money. Also, students. Did you know many are trained on the NHS subsidy and go to foreign pastures immediately after graduating? UKIP will insist that they stay at least 3 years after graduating, unless, of course, they pay back all of their bursary.
I think also, Dave, just to ask you a question here, we have to tackle this misconception that UKIP are saying they want everyone thrown out of this country who's come from overseas, and, you know, this misconception about racism. We are very aware that the NHS is quite dependent on overseas doctors and nurses from overseas and others who come in. Is that right?
We have 2 wonderful Indian doctors.
Yes.
At the Penryn Bay Surgery in North Wales, Dr. Singh and Dr. Shaker. They are brilliant. And they, let me tell you this, I enjoy going to them. They've got a debt to them. And we love them with a passion. They're so dedicated. We want to see more of that. But what we're saying is we want immigration to be controlled. That we want immigration to bring in the best skills.
That's right.
And we see that in our own 2 local doctors.
Yes.
And we see no problem in that whatsoever. But what we're seeing in the NHS in general, huge opportunities for cost cutting, which is not going to affect the patients adversely, but actually make things better. Because if we have dedicated staff, and we believe staff should be properly paid, we're just dealing with the top end here, where you can earn $375,000 a year in overtime payments. You know, we would rather use that money to pay the everyday nurse more. And think there can be a better division of wealth. And, you know, Labour, who controls the NHS in Wales, they're the Socialist Party who have a system where you can earn $375,000 in overtime alone for the top earners, whilst the poor souls on the ground, the porters, are on a pittance. Now, how is that socialism? Need to wave that red flag at half-mast. Also, those coming into the country need to have proper medical insurance. We should not be paying for foreign nationals. We don't get paid for when we go abroad. We take out medical insurance. So should people coming here and so forth. And we need to set up proper cancer diagnosis, treatment regional centres to lead the fight against cancer, improve patients' survival rates in Wales, which are below that of England. We need to do something. You know, the Labour Party shouting about the NHS in England run by the Tories, which is not brilliant, but it's better than what the Labour Party is doing in Wales. Housing, you know, everyone needs a place to live. And UKIP believes in developing brownfield sites, bringing derelict homes back into use. We believe in the concept of affordable homes. Yes. We believe that it should be local people who are receiving either council or housing association housing, and that the existing points-based system does not actually work well when it comes to local people, and also for retiring armed forces personnel and their families. We will insist that priority be given in social housing to local people and those who have served our country. Yes. And that there needs to be proper housing. Now, security. We're speaking just a day after, when this was recorded, the atrocity in London. And our hearts go out to those who have lost loved ones. We can't carry on like this. And so UKIP, talking on the Wales front, is dedicated to bring 500 new police officers into being in Wales. One thing I like so much is where we live in Rhos on Sea on the North Wales coast is having a community policewoman called Naomi. She's lovely, and the local businesses, the people who run charities like we do here, people who are local councillors, people who are involved in the community. She has got herself known. This brings intelligence, because we know if something's happening, we know we can contact Naomi. I think local contact is so important. Also, we need to have more frontline police officers. And what a waste of money, Lindsay, these commissioners are.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you know, hardly anyone goes out to vote for them anyway.
So it costs a lot.
Not democratic. Not what a waste of money. You know, when I used to stand on the Liverpool Cup and there was a big player from another team who cost in those days 2.5 million or whatever it was, we used to shout out, what a waste of money. Well, let us say this to the commissioner system in Wales. What a waste of money. We need to have a national police force in Wales. We need to reduce the costs, but not reduce the service. We need to reduce the costs, but increase the service. You know, there is so much waste, Lindsay, in government departments. We are not in the business of reducing the service. We are in the business of bringing better value to the taxpayer. And neither should we be in the business of reducing funds when it comes to the protection of our people. Like Theresa May, I mean, she has reduced a large number of police officers from the front line. No, no, no. We need to have frontline troops at this time to protect our people. And you know, we need to have the right intelligence and keep off the streets those people who are looking to do us harm. Now, when it comes to trade, you will love this. Wales exported more to the EU than is imported in 2015. So Wales does not need EU membership to trade with it. Now, what do you mean? If we exported more to the EU than imported, we don't need EU membership. I'll tell you why. If we get a seat as the UK back on the World Trade Organization, we can be like the countries USA, China, Japan, India, Brazil, and Russia, who are amongst the top 10 exporters to the EU who are not members of the single market. They keep crying out about having to be a member of the single market.
Yes.
Now, the UK as a whole has had for many years a deficit with Europe. Yes, with every other continent in the world, we've had a surplus. So being a part of the single market is not the key to prosperity. No. We've learned that we're £1.85 trillion in debt. Now, less than 12.5% of the UK economy is accounted for by trade with the EU. Now, this is a staggering statistic. Only 5% of UK businesses trade with the EU. And the other 95% trade within the UK or outside of the EU. So only they're going on and on about the single market, but there's only 5% of our businesses done with it. What are you talking about? That's why we've got a manifesto which is called Wales into the World. It's a big world out there already, even in the EU. We only 5% of our businesses actually trade with it. The other 95% trade within the UK or outside of the EU. Also, by not being part of the single market, we are not shackled by EU membership. Now, finally, transport. What's transport like in Wales? What's it like driving from North to South Wales? You know, it's like going through a third world country. It's unbelievable. If we're going to be a Wales united, south and north, we need a road from the north to the south. You know, infrastructure across Wales is crumbling. There has been chronic underinvestment, now dangerously overstretched. Wherever we go in Wales, we're in traffic jam after traffic jam. Gridlocked roads, oversubscribed trains, crumbling Victorian infrastructure. We need to bring about a National Wales Convention to plan a transport infrastructure fit for purpose and help businesses grow their exports.
Absolutely.
We need to ensure that public transport is affordable for all. Otherwise, we will never reduce car usage. You know, the cost of the trains is unbelievable in Great Britain. You know, a train journey in Europe is about a quarter of the price. So what we have to do is bring about the conditions for people to be able to afford train journeys. We need to use high-speed technology, as they already do in Asia, to make our transportation modern, clean, and effective. We need to encourage city regions to explore and innovate transport solutions and examine measures to ensure public transport is made available 24 hours a day. You know, Lindsay, this has been such a time talking to not only the people of Alyn and Deeside, and believe me, we're asking you to vote on Thursday. Get out and vote UKIP, please. Let's remove the establishments. Let us have a real word to the whole of the UK in Alyn and Deeside that we are making a change, both in the economy, both in relation to democracy, also in education, in energy, farming and fishing, health, housing, security, trade and transport. This is David and Lindsay Griffiths saying thank you for joining us. And we applaud you. We know you're going to go out this coming Thursday and vote UKIP. Thank you for joining us tonight. I tell you this, let's show the establishment something this Thursday. Let us see. I'll tell you, when I'm looking forward to that first day in the House of Commons, I'll tell you, I'll give them some stick, Lindsay. Thank you for joining us today. God bless you. goodbye for now. Lindsay, just say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Vote UKIP
Vote
on Thursday,
Oh,
the 8th of June.
Vote UKIP. We thank you for joining us. This is David Griffiths saying goodbye. Vote UKIP at this general election.
Wake up, everybody. Vote UKIP.
We thank you for joining us today. Vote, vote, vote this Thursday. UKIP in Alyn And Deeside. We love you and we say please vote, vote, vote UKIP this coming Thursday. Thank you and goodbye.